When I turn it over to the council, it's our discussion at that point. So if there's anyone else that would like to speak, they may do it now. I'll close the public hearing and turn the question back to the council.
If I may, I'd like to provide at least a little bit more clarification on some of the topics that came up. There was a mention of concern related to firefighters and the ability to fight fires when solar panels exist, so I wanted to touch on that. Did have a conversation with the fire department, and it is not a major concern for them. They do acknowledge that it might change the way that they approach fighting a fire, but in the end, it doesn't necessarily prevent them from fighting a fire. So not a major concern for our fire department as far as that goes. As it relates to aesthetics, there's obviously that's a big part of the conversation, and discussion about whether or not the intent of the regulations should be to deal with aesthetics. And I would just point out that a large portion of the development code and the regulations that we have are geared toward the way that our communities developed and looked, and a lot of the provisions that we have, whether it be masonry requirement or landscaping requirement and culmination, create the community that we have. So aesthetics is an important part of the regulation that we do have in place. With regards to the American Planning Association, I am familiar with their work over the last several years in cooperation with both ICMA and the U.S. Department of Energy through their Sunshot Solar program, that they have put out a lot of information, including a series of solar briefing papers. There's a compendium of 6 papers that they've put out, and it covers a lot of information, and you can pull language from that to support either side if you want to. So there's a lot of information that is out there. On trees, I would also point out that that same set of briefings does have a section that is dedicated to balancing solar energy use with competing interests, and does specifically talk about trees, and says, quote, "A number of local disputes over the past few years provides evidence of the growing conflict between solar and trees. These examples show that to date, when solar energy systems and trees conflict, the trees often lose, even if they were planted before the solar energy systems were installed." Straight out of APA briefing papers, and there are examples out there. I don't know about Texas, but in other states where trees have had to be trimmed and removed for solar access issues. So some of these issues I think we see occurring in other states that maybe have had some of the stuff in place before us, and will become issues that we'll have to deal with. But there's obviously a lot of information out there, and I think it, as we often do, our ordinances evolve over time to deal with the changing issues. And the proposed amendment this evening is one that's intended to take the next step as we evolve from where we were 4 or 5 years ago to where we are today, in an attempt to balance the interests that we're hearing this evening. So with that, I'll happy to answer any questions council might have.
Yes, y'all have some questions?
I had one. Just are there existing panels facing south today, and if so, would they be grandfathered?
If there are, and I couldn't tell you for sure if there are, because there were installations done prior to 2012, so it's possible they would be grandfathered.